This is the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast. I'm Ty Higgins. Does your succession plan financially pencil out? Farm and related businesses are heavily dependent on debt for operating costs, maintaining farm stability and growth. That debt dependence could be dangerous if a family member passes away and the right plan isn't in place. Ryan Conklin joins us. He's an attorney with Wright and Moore. Ryan, always great to see you. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, glad to be back, Ty. I'm still waiting on my Our Ohio Podcast T-shirt, which I think you get for being a recurring guest.
I'll make sure that happens before I head over to Ohio AgNet for sure.
Wonderful.
As we talk about succession planning, the conversation's hard enough as it is, but now there's another layer to this, right? You may think you have that succession plan in place and you just kind of set it and forget it. That's not necessarily the case. There are things that we're going to be talking about today that those farm families need to keep in mind for the long term. First, let's start with why building a bridge between an attorney and a lender is key to a succession plan's success.
Yeah. Listeners' first thought might be, what is a lawyer doing getting on here to talk about, penciling out or the lending part, the financial aspect of farm succession planning. I'm going to make a unpaid plug here for all of the Farm Bureau lending partners out there. Ag Credit, Farm Credit, Mid-America. Plenty of, Heartland Bank, plenty of lending partners that I know Farm Bureau works closely with. They are really oftentimes the lead professional in the farm succession planning process. And they should be. They are normally meeting with that family or that farmer to talk through the finances and the dollars and cents. They're frequently seeing one another at events. So they're trying to ensure that, the investment that they've made in the farm as a lender, but also for that family, endures long term. And because of that, if we're looking to protect that relationship, then really the legal solutions that are proposed on our side have to work out successfully to ensure that there's some generation to generation transfer.
You've got seven key, we'll call it ingredients to a successful succession plan, and we'll go over them one by one. And it all starts with that lender, having an established relationship with them. What does that look like?
Yeah, really similar to other members of your professional team, Ty, you want to have that relationship established to where if you're having to make a special ask or if you're in that moment where things are getting tight, you've got that trust, you've got that relationship, you've got those ties already built. If you get into a pinch point or get in some tight financial situations, onboarding a new attorney or accountant or a lender to help solve the problem and put out a fire is probably not the best environment for trying to get a new relationship established.
And on the other side of that fence is keeping your books in order, keeping that farm business financial the way it should be on paper.
Yeah, I know for all the farmer listeners that are listening to the show today, I can speak with great confidence that their favorite part of running a farm has got to be the bookwork and the bookkeeping and all the administrative work. I would just be shocked if they told me anything else in a poll of those farmers. But though it's a part that's certainly challenging, and at times it's not very enjoyable. Those actions, that time you spend in the office or behind the computer, keeping good financial records, it does come into play. The time and time again, those items help your lawyer prepare a successful plan, but they help your lender make good financial decisions that help your operation.
Something else that farm families may not think about a whole lot is keeping your business, land, or equipment buyout terms up to date.
Yeah, some of the buyout documents, buy, sell, or operating agreements that we see come through the office contain terms from the 1980s, the 1990s, and we could probably do our own podcast about what's changed in agriculture since the 1980s. But so if you're doing buyout terms that have 5, 7, or 10-year terms, what we're seeing these days with increased land prices and the increased capital required to farm is that 7 years or 10 years might not be enough time to really spread out those payments and make sure that you service that buyout while also servicing that existing debt to your lender. So similar to the way you would keep estate plan documents up to date, we look to see those business documents updated as well.
A little bit later on in the podcast, we're going to be talking about off-farm income,
Mhm.
alternative sources, and that kind of really taps into your next point here about tapping into alternative cash sources to supplement the farm.
Yeah, yeah. If you look at the industry as a whole and how it's evolved, the ability to support your family just based on farm generated income, the number of families that can pull that off, it's a pretty small group. So you're instead looking to supplement with maybe an agri-service component to your farm, whether that's seed sales or drone spraying or over, commercial trucking in the off season. Uh, Agritourism would be another great example. So those kinds of supplemental income sources on the farm are pretty common. And that's before you even get to having, an off-farm job like working for Farm Bureau or working for a lender or, heaven forbid, Ty, that somebody be an off-the-farm attorney too.
Special loan programs, they're out there. Many families, though, maybe not taking as much advantage as they should.
hmm Yeah, I think specifically about the Ohio Treasurer of State, has their very affordable operating loan program that is available that we certainly encourage clients to take advantage of. USDA has numerous programs of farm purchasing or farm improvements and conservation. With all of those, you're still tapping into government funds, so the process might be more arduous. But for an operation that's looking to grow or looking to get some debt hammered away or improve, those kinds of affordable cash could be really beneficial for a farm family.
And we can't talk about succession planning without talking about communication.
Oh, communication, Ty. For folks who live in this world of our job being to communicate, verbally and in writing, might be more natural to us, but we know for our friends in the industry, not all of those conversations come easily. That kind of communication, but we try to stress it with farm families at every turn. But it's not just within your family that communication is key. It's also with your professional team. So we advocate for notifying that professional team of major life events like receiving an inheritance or child getting married or someone jumping in on the operation that's new. So yeah, those are things you want to make sure your professional team, including your lender, is kept up to date on that if they're going to impact your finances.
Sometimes this is years of planning or decades, but how important is it to stick with your goals when it comes to making sure that your succession plans pencil out?
Yeah. The goals are the North Star here of farm succession planning. Those are your guiding light for your professional team, uh, top to bottom, side to side. That goal components, those objectives are what they should be taking into account when crafting your legal, your lending, your tax, your insurance solutions here. But those goals change over time, and this is where having a plan that is very malleable, can be changed, it can adapt, is very important. And that's because talking about penciling a plan out, the financial circumstances on your farm will change. You go just recently this week talking with several families who are getting to retire from the farm. Uh, they are classic farm family. They put every dollar into improving the farm and paying off debt to where their cash base going into retirement is pretty low. So all of that, looking at their asset base, we're now looking to transition them into savings mode and cash accumulation mode. And that changes how things pencil out for them on the farm, but it also changes how things work financially for the next generation and how they're going to help mom and dad retire.
Always great advice from Ryan Conklin. He's an attorney with Wright and Moore. You can find him online at ohiofarmlaw.com. And now I'm going to go on eBay and try to find. I was on the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt for Ryan. So appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ty.
At Ag Credit, we've been proudly providing support and financing for agriculture in rural Ohio for generations. As a local farmer-owned cooperative, we value our members and work to supply the best service possible while offering competitive products and solutions. Solutions that support the next generation getting started, ones that help operations grow, and others to aid with transitions. To apply online or find the location nearest you, visit us at agcredit.net. Ag Credit, committed to agriculture, committed to you.
As the nation's #1 insurer of farms and farm families, Nationwide has long been a reliable resource for rural America. And while the current surge of data, technology, and globalization promises incredible growth potential, each new opportunity is shadowed by rising threats like security breaches, GMO contamination, and supply chain failures. This business is about adapting. It demands a protector just as forward-minded. It demands Nationwide.
Welcome back to the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast. Working off the farm has become somewhat common across Ohio agriculture. In fact, nearly half of Ohio producers spend the majority of their year working a job away from the farm. That presents many opportunities for farmers to be a part of agriculture in a different way. This week on the podcast, we continue our series that explores options that may be available to those looking for a new career path in addition to working on the farm, just like Andy Hollenbach does. He is a farmer in Licking County, former Licking County Farm Bureau president, and he's an insurance agent at the Carey Ball Agency. Andy, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Ty. I appreciate it.
About 20 years ago, sitting around the table with my grandpa, and he says, I know this guy down the road. And as my grandpa told it, he's got it figured out. And that was a young Andy Hollenbach way back in the day. And we're going to talk about what you've been able to do in agriculture and then off the farm as well. But been told about you for a long, long time. Very lucky to and fortunate to be able to form a friendship with you over the years and get to know you pretty well with your family there. So good to have you on here in my world here on the podcast. So let's talk about your operation, what you do there in Licking County.
Well, Ty, we're kind of a unique operation. As you know, we are first generation farmers, essentially. My wife and I started our farm from scratch, from nothing. You know, I think you've heard the story. We bought our first farm a month after we got married. I don't know that my in-laws were super happy with us making such a large purchase at the time, but we worked hard at it. We made good decisions, I guess. And looking back, we probably had a little bit of luck along the way. But we're both college educated. We both worked away from the farm when we got started. I used to tell everybody I worked for ODNR here in Ohio, so I worked for the state of Ohio. And I used to joke with my colleagues and say I worked for the state to pay for my farming habit. But I joke that way, but there was some truth to that too. I don't think we could have gotten started and have accomplished what we have if we wouldn't have worked away from the farm.
That mindset continues. So talk about what you do now off the farm and your career.
Yeah. So, our farm is cattle. We have a poultry complex. We row crop and raise some hay. We're farming about 1,000 acres. And as we've grown to that, we certainly didn't start there, but as we've grown to that, it has provided us the opportunity for both of us to come home to the farm. My wife's home to the farm full time from her off farm job. She pretty well manages the poultry complex. And then I continue to work part time away from the farm. And that's with the Carey Ball Insurance Agency. And I specialize in farm insurance because that's my niche. You know what I mean? But that opportunity, provides that other source of income. I've always looked at our farm as multi-pronged. We have some beef cattle. We raise calf pairs, which sell for 4-H projects and herd replacement, and then we sell some freezer beef. So there's kind of one avenue on the farm. And then we raise hay and bale straw, and we sell some of that along with using it with our cattle and the row crop. So I felt like that was another prong to the farm. Then the poultry operation is kind of the third prong to the farm. But then the fourth prong has always been the off-farm income, and I guess I've always taken the philosophy that, Lord willing, not all four of those prongs have a bad year at the same time. You may have a bad crop year, you may have a bad hay year, but when you have the poultry and the off-farm income, not everything, Lord willing, goes bad at the same time. So it provides us some stability.
Many people are probably wondering how many hours are in your day, Andy, when you have those four prongs. And we just got through a pretty challenging planting season. I know you've had to go back in with a planter in a couple of spots and replant. So during the busiest times of year, how do you find the balance of doing both the on-farm stuff and the off-farm stuff?
So the beauty with kind of specializing in farm insurance is there's a couple times a year that guys really don't want to be bothered, right? And that's the spring and the fall. Of course, that's the time when farmers are the busiest. Now, if they have an issue and they have a claim type situation, then they want to be bothered. But the fact that most guys want to talk about insurance in the off season really fits well with my farming operation, because when I'm busy, they're busy. And we understand each other. And I guess that's probably the biggest benefit for me as being a farmer and dealing with farmers. I understand when they're busy. They understand when I'm busy. But probably broader than that, Ty, is we speak the same language. I couldn't tell you the number of times guys have sit down at the table and we've been talking, and their biggest complaint is they call into their agent and that agent has absolutely no idea what they're talking, doesn't understand what that piece of machinery is, or doesn't understand what they're trying to do on their farm. And that's probably been one of the biggest benefits for me. I can, for the most part, if you call me and say, I bought this piece of equipment at this auction today and I need to insure it, I know what that piece of equipment is, what it does, and probably a fairly close value on what it should be insured for. And, we understand livestock operation, we understand, row crop operations. So those things have really helped me when it comes to the insurance side of stuff and being able to relate with guys and build those relationships. Because let's face it, everything in the world is about relationships.
How did you find farm insurance from ODNR to farm insurance? What did that path look like for you? And what did you need to get started? What are the qualifications, the certifications? How difficult is it to get into?
Sure. So it's kind of a funny story, to be honest with you. John and Carrie Ball were our insurance agents. We have our insurance with Nationwide. There's a shameless plug for Nationwide. But we sat down at our kitchen table, my wife, Mamie, and I, and John and Carrie, and we were doing an annual review with our farm policy. And at the time, John and Carrie were wanting to expand their agency. And we just were casually conversating, and they asked me, hey, do you know anybody who might be interested in doing this type of work? And after that meeting, John and Carrie left, and Mamie and I were sitting there at the table, and we were like, do you think they were trying to get me to come work at the agency? Well, apparently John and Carrie were having the same conversation on the truck ride home. So very next day I get a call from John, and he said, hey, would you be interested in coming to work with us part-time? And at the time, I'll be honest with you, my dad had just passed away, and he had always helped me on the farm since he had retired from his off-farm job. He had always helped me. So, the stars kind of aligned. John and Carrie presented this opportunity for me to work with them part-time. My dad had passed away, so I needed to come and spend more time on the farm, and fill that void that he left. So after some conversations, we decided that I would go that route and join John and Carrie at the agency. So training wise, there's some schooling that you have to go through to become an insurance agent. And that schooling is different. There's property and casualty, there's life and health, there's different, branches of the insurance industry. So you kind of got to figure out which branch you want to go down, or multiple branches. You go get that training, and then you have to pass a state test. It's kind of like the high schoolers right now. They've got to pass these state tests to graduate. You have to pass a state test, just like a lawyer would to become certified here in Ohio. And then once you pass that state test, you can get appointed with an agency, with a company. You're licensed to sell insurance at that point. And then there's some yearly continuing education that you have to complete. Every 2 years, you have to complete so much continuing education. You don't have to retest, but you have to meet the hours of requirement to continue and renew your license as you continue in that career. So
I know those tests are one thing, but the experience of working with farmers, and you had a few seasons now under your belt as an insurance provider with Gary Bell. What are some of the common insurance related challenges that you're seeing farmers have to deal with year in and year out?
Insurance is one of those things that, and you're probably the same as I was. My first insurance agent was who my parents' insurance was through. And the path that I take or you take may not be the same path that our parents took. So that insurance or that agent may not fit what you're doing or I'm doing or Joe Farmer's doing. So to me, one of the biggest things is farmers, this is an ever evolving environment. We built grain bins, I don't know, 15 years ago, and then we built grain bins 3 years ago. Quite a significant price difference in those grain bins, to say the least. So, farmers are creatures of habit. We don't like a lot of change. If we get comfortable with a person or a company, we may stick with that person our whole entire farming career. Now, that goes for seed sales, fertilize, insurance. And the policy that we had 20 years ago is not the policy that we need today. Values have changed significantly on equipment, on buildings, on grain bins, for example. So, farmers are just, hey, that bill comes, we throw it in the file with all the other paperwork that we keep, we write the check and we move on. But I really encourage guys, at least once a year, try at a minimum once a year. But if you can't do it, at least do it every other year. Sit down with your agent and go over your policy. In particular, go over the value of stuff on your policy. That 1977 John Deere 4430 that used to be worth 10 grand is now worth 30, and you can't replace it for $10,000. So we have to adjust the coverages on our policies. Pole barns are the same way. 20 years ago, you built that pole barn for $20,000. Now it costs you 80. So the biggest thing I see is some of these older policies, they haven't adjusted the coverage limits. So then when we do have a claim situation, they're upset because the dollars being paid to them are way less than what it's going to cost to replace that barn, equipment, grain bin. So we have to do our due diligence in keeping up with the times. Not only as a farmer perspective, we need to make sure we're covering ourselves, but then as an agent perspective, I need to remind Ty Higgins, hey, we ought to really sit down and review this. What changes have you made in the last year to your operation? And try to keep it as current as we can.
You might have made just some guy's day right now saying that his 50-year-old tractor's worth 30 grand. He might be going to the barn dusting that thing off now. You never know. But you mentioned...
Hey, you can work on those tractors.
True, that's right. You mentioned how things changed in values over the past few decades, generations really. But how do you see your role evolving as the agriculture industry as a whole continues to change?
Well, this is It's an interesting question, Ty, because as times continue to change, now we've got more guys. Drones are a perfect example. 8 years ago or whatever, when I got into the insurance industry, that wasn't even a conversation. Now we've got guys that are coming out of college and they look at this and say, hey, I can spend $40,000, $60,000. I can become a drone sprayer and start their own business. That poses coverage issues because companies, we haven't gotten that far in the insurance industry on how do we cover those, what liability comes with that. So I think as equipment changes, more automation comes in, drones, for example, we have to keep up as agents on what companies are offering that type of coverage, what risks are happening. That's one thing. And then just liability coverage for your farm. My wife and I talk all the time. My biggest fear is when we're moving equipment down the road. And it doesn't matter if it's our combine, our tractor, or a semi-load of grain. That's our biggest exposure. And $1 million, let's say, doesn't pay for nearly as much as it did 10 years ago. So I think farmers really have to take a hard look at their liability coverage. And we've had this conversation within our agency as agents. If a guy loses a pole barn, it's a hit financially. In the long run, they can recover from that. If they have a liability incident and they cause death or serious medical injuries, if they don't have enough coverage in that liability, that's really hard to recover from. And let's face it, just a trip to the hospital and the ambulance anymore is really expensive, let alone any sort of true medical care or time in a hospital. So I encourage guys, like our last conversation there, value of equipment, value of buildings is really important. But beyond all of that is making sure your liability coverage is where it needs to be, because that is an incident where you may not be able to recover from.
He wears a lot more hats than the one on his head from Hollenbach Farms, because he was in the barn this morning and just got in from cutting hay, and he's been in the field earlier with his crop insurance agent. So he's doing a lot of things, including making time for a podcast with Ohio Farm Bureau. Andy Hollenbach is a farmer in Licking County, former Licking County Farm Bureau president, and an insurance agent at Carey Ball Agency. Great to visit with you, my friend, and thank you so much for carving time out of your very busy day and very busy season for me.
No problem, Ty. Always glad to help, and hope somebody takes something from the podcast and makes their farm and makes their life better from it.
Find previous podcasts at ohiofarmbureau.org and search podcast.